So I'll just go ahead and dive in.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled and honored, frankly, to welcome Dr. Vandana Shiva to our show. Dr. Shiva is a world renowned author, speaker, scholar, activist, scientist, researcher, pioneer of many important ideas. You name it, she's done it. So thank you so much, Dr. Shiva, for your time. And it's truly an honor to speak to you.
Thank you, Nathan. My pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Shiva, in preparing for our conversation today, I read your book, Oneness versus the 1%, which was illuminating. And also, of course, some of these things can be a bit distressing when you realize the scale of them, as far as the power of the 1%, the influence they wield, and their intentions, frankly, as we learn more about what those are. But I think what I came away with most was this sense that we really stand at a choosing point. I think it's something that we've been aware of maybe for several years regarding the climate and conservation and the earth, but it feels like this year, this moment is especially important. And I wonder if you agree and what your thoughts are sort of about
I,
this moment
I,
in
I
time.
absolutely, I absolutely agree. We are at a watershed moment between the continuity of our species
Hmm.
and our humanity and the extinction of the species in a few decades, maybe, but the extinction of humanity in the very short run.
Hmm.
Humanity, both for those who are being treated like disposable people. I've studied in Canada, I've done my PhD in Canada, and it was a society that had guarantee of everything. There was no poverty, no one was denied health, no one was denied education, everyone had homes. It was a distributed prosperity. And now I watch the visions of people being thrown out of apartments and then being thrown out of the streets, because that too is illegal. And I say, in such a short time, how could it be that the best of countries could treat their citizens as disposable people?
Yeah, absolutely. And also the way I think many of us have observed corporations treating individual beings as disposable, whether that's wildlife, plant life, or human life, frankly. And now we're
Yeah.
just seeing this sort of culmination of that philosophy, that practice just getting bigger and more visible than ever. And that reminds me again of another point you make in the book that really this is the next step in colonization. That sometimes I think we think of ourselves as living in a post-colonial world, but we don't. And I'd love to hear you speak about your ideas of, the modern day colonialism, who the colonists are and who the colonized are.
Uh, because I come from a land that was colonized, I come from the land for which the first corporation
Hmm.
was created, the East India Company. For us, these trajectories become more easier to identify. And we don't fall into the trap of this linear progress that the colonizers have created, that
Hmm.
we were primitive. We were backward while they were stealing our vaccines. Vaccination was made in India. They took the idea from here, then
Wow.
banned it in India.
Of course.
As they have done for so much biodiversity, for so many practice, steel making,
Hmm.
the best of steel making transferred, shipbuilding. They took the best of shipbuilding and then they banned the shipbuilding in India. So we have watched this over the life of the East India Company.
Hmm.
So when the Monsanto say, we are the creators of seed and we will own the seed and no farmer will have the right to save seed, I recognize it as biocolonialism. I recognize it as bioimperialism, as an empire over life. When I watch Bill Gates stand up on the stage at the Paris summit in 2015 on climate, and in 2016, I see him arrive in my country where overnight cash has been banned. Overnight, a land of small money, 2 rupees, 5 rupees, rickshaw puller, a worker, a seller of 5 pieces of cauliflower, all their lifetime earnings stolen. By 3 days later, he congratulates India on the war on cash. And then I realized this is also connected. And just as East India Company to Monsanto, Columbus to the biotech industry was a continuity of colonialism, this new mega convergence of the biotech industry, which is the old poison cartel of Hitler's Germany, with the tech giants who have emerged as giants in the last 30 years of deregulation and globalization, largely by never ever paying any tax. The first World Trade Organization meeting was no tax on information transfer. So here is the biggest money-making endeavor of our times, and they're not taxed. But when I watched our cash being banned, just like Monsanto tried to ban our seed saving, and I watch forcing of digital technologies on children who have universal education under our constitution. And we have, even in the poorest village, the poorest child can go to a physical school. Overnight, you get digital smartphone compulsory. 50% of the children are disenfranchised. So I watch this as the next step of colonialism, which is now all the corporations that have gained illegitimate power through unfair rules of unfair trade, which is called free trade in the typical double speak of our times.
Right.
Then I say, oh, so this is the new recolonization. But this colonization is deeper. The first round, they took land and gold and spices and textiles. Second round, they tried to take life, living systems. And I have to say, the little bit of work I did, saving seeds, redefining intellectual property, redefining agriculture and primitive seeds and which are the real breeders of the world, we stopped that. We stopped that. This new colonization follows the old patterns. And what I recognize as these patterns is you just decide that something is a territory for you, even though it is someone else's life and place and home. That's what the first colonization did. Columbus, Papal Bull, go conquer, use military, call them barbarians, civilize them. Always a civilizing mission. So the Gateses of the world are trying to civilize us by forcing digital technologies where we need them or not. Where we need them, fine, I'm more than open to it. But the forcing is what I find the narrative of civilizing, that if you don't have a smartphone, you're somehow not smart enough.
Right.
When all the smartness lies in our minds and brains.
Yeah, that manipulation.
And then enclosure of the commons, and enclosure of the commons. So right now, what's being enclosed is the commons of our minds. As this brilliant book, Surveillance Capitalism, showed, that in this, if for the British, the land became property, then for the Monsantos, seed became intellectual property. For this age, basically, we are the property, we are the mine, and our data being mined is not just the raw material, but we are then also the supermarket on whom this processed data has to be done to modulate our behavior. So it is the ultimate enclosure of our humanity. Therefore, when I say we face extermination, I mean it both in the ecological and biological sense, but I mean it in the sense of our total being. Our being as full autonomous beings who can think, who can make choices, who can care, who can work for justice, who can be compassionate. Those are the values that have kept all beings alive, including human beings, and those are the values threatened with extinguishing. So when I think of the crisis of extinction, it's not just an issue of other species. It's definitely not an issue of only of a biological being, even though that's at stake. Look at the number of people who've died of hunger during the COVID lockdown. Look at the number of people who've lost their livelihoods during the COVID lockdown. Every day I meet a young man who lost what they were doing and are somehow struggling, selling vegetables, driving a little taxi. And this is just the beginning. If you project this process, then there'll be the next. And today they're selling vegetables. They'll try and make that illegal, which they've been trying forever under sanitary and phytosanitary agreement. So it is time for us to have unity with other beings and to have solidarity. And that's why I talk of Earth democracy. I started to talk about it in the lead up to the World Trade Organization meetings at Seattle. But I think more than ever before, individualism will make us victims.
Uh,
Solidarity and community will allow us to find ways beyond this colonialism, which are the same ways that got us out of the old colonialisms.
I think you make such a good point that it's the same tactics and the same ends for the colonizers. It's just that they have tools now that they've never had, which does give them access to our minds, our way of thinking, our ways of behaving with all of this data, as you said, and with technologies that we're being convinced we need. And I think that's one of the most dangerous tactics that they use to tell us this is good for you. Say to the barbarians they're too simple to achieve what we can help them achieve. Say to the farmer that he needs this or she needs this genetically modified seed in order to create enough wealth to survive. It's this tactic of you need us, and what we have is good for you. And how do we see through that? How do we use our discernment to recognize what's real in ourselves and in each other, to build those relationships that you're talking about and overcome this what's being imposed on us, essentially?
So this requires the decolonization of the past phases
Hmm.
while we resist this colonization. So I see colonialism having, in a way, three aspects that have to work together to reinforce each other.
Hmm.
Of course, there was the colonialism, barbaric colonialism, but then very rapidly into 200 years, paraded as economics. It was never economics. It was always theft. But if you look, when I read the Adam Smiths of the world, and I'm saying he's just writing a justification of colonialism.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
is not talking about how people organize their lives to meet their needs and care for the earth.
Hmm.
So commercial colonialism and commercial commerce as colonialism, which became mutated into economics.
Yeah.
And therefore, every time we are told this is economics, this is economics, this is the economy, it's good for the economy, it's necessary for the
You
economy.
hear it so often, and then everyone stops talking.
Everyone stops talking.
Right.
So we have to go back to the roots. I'm doing my new book, and in fact, the Italian version I think should be out, but the Spanish people are doing it. The English will be out, and this book, Oneness versus 1%, is out in Germany in German.
Hmm.
And basically, I went back to the roots of all these words, and interestingly, like so much else, the roots, which are usually Latin, are the opposite of how the terms are being used today.
Yeah.
So economy never meant making money. Economy meant the art of living, taking care of our household, oikos. Yeah. The second element is changing the idea of what is knowledge and how we know. What's reality, how we know. And that's the mechanistic paradigm, put together very, very violently. Its early days are actually the witch hunts. Yeah. What were people? And Germany was the capital of the witch hunts. People think it was the Catholic countries. No, the witch hunts killed most people, and it began with heresy. If you speak opposite, but every knowledge has multiple pluralities of knowing. The Bacons of the world, the Descartes of the world, the Boyles of the world, my book Staying Alive, went to those roots to try and understand why are the Western paradigms so exploitative, and how come our women rise to protect the forest, and the so-called scientific forest is only about logging and logging and logging and logging. So I went to the roots of that Baconian science. The third is the technology issue. So it's not that we've invented technology now. We've always had technology. And any transformation, any tool, not just of human beings, but of nature, of all beings, is a technology. When the bird makes its nest, it is a sophisticated technology. When a bee makes its hive, it is a sophisticated technology. But part of what colonialism, the last colonialism did, was build these walls and said, only men count and not women. only white men count and not other people. Only the colonizer counts and the rest are barbarians to be colonized. They are not human, therefore empty land. This particular disenfranchisement went together. Therefore, you cannot think of racism as a different problem and patriarchy as a separate problem and religious intolerance as a separate problem and class division as a separate problem. They are part of one system, which required all of these exclusions. But for me, the most serious exclusion really was anthropocentrism, that humans who can exploit the rest of humans and nature are somehow superior. And anthropocentrism then is what allows us to be blind to the intelligence of the bee and the fungi and the bacteria, of the wolf and the whale. And it also is what allows the blinding of the technologies, because technology and intelligence are not separate, it's the intelligence that allows you to discriminate, that then allows you to shape the tools that enhance the well-being of those around you and yourself. Now, all that goes in the meaning of technology. For the first time, with colonialism, technologies became tools of exploitation. Then the oil age made it worse. It became extractive. And in a way, it is not an accident that the digital barons talk about data as the new oil, because for them, the age of oil is the organizing system on the basis of which they're reducing us. They're reducing us to fossil fuels to be mined.
Yeah.
They're reducing us to inert systems, objects to be manipulated, just like they could turn oil into petrochemicals and pesticides and plastics. They would like us to be human pesticides and human plastic. And for me, when the hate speech and the amplification through social media is like the social pesticide. Yeah. And when they force us to forget what really matters to our well-being, and we lose that discrimination, we are becoming plastic human beings, Nathan.
Yeah. No, it's there are moments during this pandemic even where watching this rhetoric of we must separate from each other, we must isolate, and you can never consider any alternative. And if you do, then you're foolish or you're dangerous or putting other people in danger. And it's not to say that some of the science, I certainly am not a virologist, but it seems to me that building communities through these times is the most important thing we can do. And we have to be careful about how.
Yeah, Nathan, I'll just give you two examples. So my main work is with rural communities, with women, with farmers. And because we are largely a land of farmers, 60% of India farms today. The lockdown could not lock down every farm, otherwise India would have starved. So during lockdown, the farmers worked. In the rural areas where we work, not one person had COVID, not one person. Okay, and that's not all. 14 months, the Indian farmers were protesting on the streets of Delhi. Every highway around Delhi had been occupied by them. 14 months against new laws of deregulation, which would have wiped them out. Our farmers watch America, they watch Canada, they watch Europe. It's not that they don't have relatives in these other places.
Sure.
And so they don't want to go there. They don't want to go in that place of disposability. So we want to farm. We are proud farmers. We are feeders of the nation. We want to stay here. And 14 months, more than 100,000, 200,000 people gathered in one place. No COVID. No COVID. So, as a scientist, I say, observe the phenomena. That's what we're supposed to do.
Right.
The last thing you need to do is take the propaganda of those who have a lot of money to make out of digitalizing our universes. And they are not virologists either. So how come they're in charge of telling us what we should be doing?
Yeah.
How come they're in charge to tell us that everything should lock down? How come they're in charge of making the whole, to me, what's been really strange about COVID and lockdowns is how the whole world marched in Hitlerian march. We have been diverse enough. for each country to work out its health system and its health responses. It's not that we haven't had pandemics before. It's not that we haven't had infectious diseases before, but we
Right.
had sovereign health systems. We had public health systems.
Hmm.
What we've watched in COVID is the end of public health as a public good.
Hmm. Yeah. And the
Yeah?
rise
And with the Mr. Gates running the WHO, and there's enough evidence on all of this, in a way, sadly, epidemiology went through the window, virology went through the window, medicine went through the window, and the best of people weren't being listened to.
Hmm.
So I think observe the phenomena. Don't blindly believe rhetoric,
Absolutely.
especially rhetoric that comes from those who would like you to be fractured and fragmented. Rhetoric that makes you afraid of yourself, afraid of your child, afraid of your neighbor, afraid of your family. It's a deeper level of fear mongering.
It is.
And yes, we must have deep science, but this is not science.
No, you're right. Any fear of self, fear of the self's ability to heal, to be resilient, of connection to others, we should look very suspectly at these arguments being made. And also this raising of a savior of a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is now our only solution. The pharmaceutical industry is the only way to get us out of this. How is it that we're not questioning that narrative more?
Well, the interesting thing is, because for years I have now it's about 20 years we've had the Earth University in India, and basically learning from the earth, learning how to take care of the earth, and people who come to our Earth University, the Navdanya Biodiversity Farm, have never fallen ill, and they work with the soil, they work with each other. But every time I've had a group of visitors in Delhi, because they are so antisepticized, they fall ill immediately. So beyond a point, chemical killing of that which gives us immunity is the source of disease. So, I've read so much saying, we must kill every virus. Well, that's what they try to do with pesticides. Let's kill every pest. Let's kill every insect. Now we have more and more and more diseases in agriculture.
Right.
Not less.
Right.
We are walking microbes. We are walking biomes. How can you declare war on yourself? These are simple things of fundamental science that people need to remember, recognize, learn. So when you said, how do you discriminate? Life is lived. Yeah. Life is not prescribed.
I love that.
And living is the best teacher. And discrimination is intelligence. Intelligence comes from intelligere, the ability to discriminate, to make a choice, to know this is good and this is not. If bacteria and fungi can do it, let's remember we have done it. Absolutely. And this is our last opportunity as human beings to say, I will discriminate. And discrimination is not a negative word if it's not blind. Discrimination between right and wrong, good and bad, not in absolutist terms, but in relational terms. So in India, our guiding thought is dharma, the right action. That's where the right livelihood comes from. Dharma is right livelihood, the right action. What is the right action? Well, you're related to millions of species. You're related to hundreds of human beings who are in one way or the other connected to you. Your right relationship is with all of them, not with one. It's not absolutist. It doesn't come from us. That's why in Indian philosophy, we talk of swa-dharma, the dharma that comes from you as a conscious living being, responsible and compassionate for other living beings to whom you're related. That is where reality comes from. That reality is what they'd like to extinguish, so that their fake worlds, the fake food, the fake science, the fake media can take over our lives. But the minute we lose our ability to discriminate between real soil and real food and fake food and farming without farmers, then we've already written an extinction sentence for ourselves. We've already written it. Then, just like artificial movement of machines can be treated as a robot, but it's not a person. It's just a bundle of machinery. Uh, we would just then be robotic. And what I've seen in these 2 years is as more and more people are depending on these gadgets to become smart, they are losing their basic ability to make sense of everyday matters.
Mm.
Put two and two together to say this is what it is, and in a way, our brains are already being frozen, and we are dumbing down on a very rapid scale. So I would say, love living, defend living, and love the freedom of your mind. Don't give it up. Every freedom movement has been about freedom. And Gandhi said, you can kill me, you can shoot me, but you can't take my being away, because that being is within me, and you can't steal that from me. And that sense of the autonomy of the being in interrelatedness is what's being tested to its fullest, and it's under harsh test that the best emerges, is my learning from a long life. We used to say a lovely prayer in school: the steel is strong because it knows the hammer and white heat. And with the hammer and white heat of what we are living through, from the hammer of the 1%, let us emerge shining and strong as human beings.
Wow. I just felt chills through my whole body. And I think what I love so much about your perspective is this strength that you have. There's no defeat in your voice. There's no, this isn't over. This isn't inevitable. We are powerful. When we recognize who we really are, there's power there. And when we see each other for who we really are and what we can do together, there's power there. And it almost sounds to me like your antidote is to this entire sort of this choice that we have, this what's being imposed on us or what will actually give us life, is diversity and getting back to what's real and respecting the true things we have, which is the earth, which is each other, which is the gift of our life. And I won't be as articulate, I don't think, as you at coalescing this, but I just feel so much strength and power in the way you speak, and it's inspiring to me. And I would love to hear you speak about that power that we have as beings.
So I have worked in service of the seed for the last 34 years, saving seed, for the simple reason I did not accept that it was a machine that was invented by Monsanto. I said, that is rubbish. And seed is living. And I didn't know enough about it, but I do know it is living. And it's not Monsanto's invention. So what I have learned from the seed is so small. I mean, look at the mustard seed.
From the Bible.
Look at the sesame seed. And in that is a power. And that power is in us. So the minute we realize we are part of nature and not separate, that nature is not dead, but alive. And it's alive like in my quantum training. In the quantum world, there are no fixed entities. Therefore, there is nothing like extermination. There's potential. You cannot exterminate potential. It is lying in the seed. So the seed, I have made seed collections. An old woman said, I used to grow this seed, but 40 years ago I stopped. And because nobody was eating it anymore. And here is a little bit in my little underground seed bank. Try it. And it didn't just grow out after 40 years. It did better than all the contemporary grown seeds. Because, in those days, people used to breed with a lot of care and a lot of love. So latency is not in inertness. Waiting for your potential to rise. So I say, okay, the Mr. Gates, time will pass, your time will go. But the second thing, as you mentioned, is diversity and resilience. Diversity is where resilience comes from. And any mechanical thing breaks down. Every living thing heals, repairs, rejuvenates. And that is where I get my foundational hope. We tried an interview on another system and it didn't work.
It's true. Yeah.
I have, how many times the bank can't give you a reply because their systems are down.
Hmm.
The airlines can't give you a boarding pass. The systems are down. Well, in mechanical systems, systems go down.
Hmm.
In living systems, the potential for life lives on and on and on.
'Cause
And if we were to just keep those two things in mind, no one should despair. Everything should organize to grow life today in their backyard, in a little pot, in the community, and organize.
Hmm.
There will be no option outside organizing.
Right.
And that's why, for me, seed saving, creating communities, seed banks saw us through the last colonial age of Monsanto's bioimperialism. And I look at when it started, it was like, my God, they want all the seed of the world. And I went through a chill. I said,
Hmm.
what will happen if there's no other seed except the GMOs and patent seed? And I said, no, we can't let it happen. And we started saving seeds. And here the seeds are alive and Monsanto's gone.
Hmm. That's true.
Shouldn't we take some kind of message from that? Let's think of a decade from now. Let's think of 2030. Not in the vision of the great reset of the rich, cruel guys of this world, but a great reprogramming with intelligence and compassion of humanity in concert with other beings. We can do it.
Yeah.
It's totally doable.
Yeah. And I love also, I find inspiration in the history of India with the Satyagraha movements of Gandhi, the people's movements, which really grew out of this solidarity with other real people, and the end of the East India Company, which was brought about by people. And recently in India with this farmers movement, I think 333 days of protests, hundreds of farmers lost their lives to this struggle, but they won. The Prime Minister Modi came out and said, we're not going to roll out these exploitative laws. There's evidence that it works. If we can just build the right connections, and that is where technology becomes our tool. We can build solidarity through that. We can use, it's not innately bad or good, it's how we use it, as I think you said earlier. So we can use that as our tool to connect, to build true relationships, to build true movements of solidarity around these ideas of life and the preserving of it. Yeah. I want to be mindful of your time, Dr. Shiva, but one thing I really want to ask you about is this idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, because it's one of my favorite things that I've heard you speak about. And I really would be so grateful if you'd share what it means to you.
Yeah. So, the living earth has many names. She's Gaia. In Greece, she's Pachamama in the Andean countries. She's Erd, I think, in so many European languages. And in India, she has many names, but one of them is Vasundhara. Yeah? And Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is Vasundhara's family. Kutumb is family. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the earth family. And the earth family is a clear thinking that the bees and the earthworms are not less than us. They are part of the family. Just like a new baby in a family is not a less being. It's just a newborn being. But newness in age doesn't make it less. Height, age, color, gender, religion, none of them make people less and more. Yeah? So beings are being, and at any point of their lives, they are full beings. And then the next step of their life, they're full beings at that step of their life. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is really about the democracy of all beings. That's why when I wrote a democracy, I took inspiration from Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But for me, it's been the guidance when I fight a Monsanto who wants to own and patent life. I say, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, you can't own your family. You can't turn your family into property, even though you've had distorted societies that tried to do that. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that you cannot manipulate other beings, that they are your family, so you have to live in partnership with them. And, in a family has harmony only when you accept all the strange behaviors each of us has. And, harmony is when you say, this one has this little twist, we live with it. And this one has this crankiness, and we live with it. And that ability to live with this diversity of being is what makes family. And to live with the diversity of beings of the earth is what makes the earth family. And every step of the new colonialism, if the old colonialism was to take over what's there, the new colonialism is take over what's there by twisting it and manipulating it and engineering it and saying you aren't good enough, and I will make you a superior being to yourself. And that's why Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is a brilliant guide on how to live on this earth in a way without harming the earth, harming other people, letting them enjoy their share of the earth's gifts, and enjoying your share of the earth's gift. We have a very beautiful Upanishad, short Upanishad. I think the first stanza is, this universe and earth is for all of us, and it's sacred and it's divine. And enjoy the gifts. It says enjoy the gifts, but without greed. Recognizing that others have their share. And when you take from others, when you take more than your right, you are taking others' share, you're taking from other humans, you're taking from other beings, you're taking from future generations. And therefore it's theft.
Yeah. And what I love about it is I think it's built on truth, which is why it resonates, which is why it lives. Because I mean, you look at the Aboriginal culture in Australia, there's a reason they sustained their livelihood for thousands of years. Even I think the history of India, there's similar stories where there was wealth and prosperity because there was respect and reciprocity. And an idea that's built on truth will always have life. And so that's why Navdanya, your organization, is thriving, where Monsanto had to be eaten by another organization in order to continue any form of its life. And yeah, I think that's beautiful. And maybe just as we wrap up, there was a quote from the book that really resonated with me, and it was, "The duty to care, the courage to stop the harm being caused by the 1% to the earth, or by those who would cause harm, in parentheses, not mine, and its beings, is a part of life and living," which to me says we're all being called now to be part of this earth family, to take this on to ourselves, to lend our voice to the conversation in whatever way we can. Soon we won't have a choice but to choose. You know, we either have to decide that we're going down this path of kind of being colonized, whether we know it or not, taking this narrative on from those in power, or choosing to build with each other and kind of have this renaissance of our relationship to the earth, to nature, and each other. And I would love to just hear, maybe again as we wrap up, your thoughts on what the individual can do, what each of us can take on, what our responsibility is. How can we be part of this earth family? How can we invite others into the fold?
So, both my quantum training as well as my Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam training has shown that an artificial duality that was created by the colonial age and the industrial age and the mechanistic age of the individual versus society. Yeah? That if you're socially responsible, then you have to give up somehow part of what's good for you. And that is a very artificial conflict. That dualism is artificially constructed. The conflict is artificially constructed. So each of us has to be more of who we are, yeah, but not at the cost of others. In fact, by taking care of others and not just avoiding harm, but going beyond and saying taking care. And if that is the case, then sovereignty and relationship go hand in hand. And because autonomy, sovereignty, and relationship go hand in hand, the individual's responsibility is the responsibility to everything around, knowing that the more you give, the more you receive. All indigenous cultures, whether it's the Native Americans or the Aboriginal Australians or the Indian society, we grew prosperity by giving. Every mother creates prosperity by giving. And it's this art of giving that we need to reclaim, because the grabbers made us all feel so insecure that if we weren't little petty grabbers in their image, we would have nothing, and they created a very artificial sense of insecurity. And The idea of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is to know our security comes from nature, our security comes from community, our security comes from our loving relationships. And therefore, the more you give, the more you'll have. I have lived a very long life on this principle. And I can tell you, I'm well looked after.
That's great. Yeah, taking care of me means taking care of you, means taking care of all that we have around us, which is nature as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Shiva. This has been, I don't really have words right now. It's really, truly been beautiful to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan. And take care of yourself and everyone around you and every being around you. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Nathan Gardner, host of We Can Remake the World. If you enjoyed today's interview, check out the full episode with more information and inspiration and action steps that you can take to make a difference today. Link in the description below. Also, check out our other episodes with more amazing businesses, nonprofits, artists, and individuals from around the world who are changing the world right now. Link to those episodes also in the description below. And most of all, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it. We are trying to reach as many people around the world as we can with these stories of hope and possibility and positive change. Our goal is to build a movement of world changers, individual citizens who are working to make the world a better place. Because let's be real, our world could be way better than it is right now, right? Great. So let's build it. Share and join the conversation. Follow us on Instagram at WeCanRemakeTheWorld. Check us out at our website, WeCanRemakeTheWorld.com, with more tools, resources, information about every guest that we have. Follow us on Twitter at WCR2W Podcast. And subscribe to our show on all major platforms, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, Deezer, all the rest of them. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And remember, true change starts with us. So let's do it. Let's change the world.